Invasive species are one of the major drivers of global biodiversity loss, a decrease in species, genetic and ecosystem diversity. An invasive species is one that is not normally found in a given area and whose introduction has significant negative impacts on the exposed ecosystem. But why are these invasive species so harmful? You might think that adding species to a given area increases its biodiversity, but this isn't necessarily true. Invasive species can lead to the competitive exclusion and displacement of native species, changing overall community structure. Furthermore, the presence of one invasive species can facilitate the entry and spread of another invasive species in a process termed secondary invasion. Secondary invasions are driven by novel interactions between species and can occur directly via altered mutualisms or indirectly as a result of changed community structure. This video covers a study of invader-invader interactions via myrmecochory, a type of mutualism in which plant seeds are dispersed by ants. For both invaded and non-invaded sites, frequencies and rate of seed removal over 3 hours were compared. Overall, there was a 13% decrease in the number of seeds dispersed in invaded locations compared with non-invaded locations. Whilst undisturbed ant communities favoured the dispersal of large-seeded native plant species, invasive acacia plant seeds were preferentially dispersed at invaded sites. This preferential dispersal of invasive plant species in the presence of the invasive ant is an example of a secondary invasion. The Argentine ant, like other invasive ant species, was found to disrupt community structure of native seed dispersing ants. At least 12 of these native ant species were displaced in invaded sites. Despite a simultaneous increase in at least 2 other species, overall there was a decrease in native ant abundance and diversity. Species-specific nests were then set up, surrounded with seed mix, and left for 24 hours. Excavation of these nests mirrored seed dispersal patterns above ground, with the preferential dispersal of invasive seeds. Whilst the Argentine ant is generally regarded as a poor seed disperser, it was concluded to have a significant impact on driving the secondary invasion of acacia plant species. It achieved this indirectly by changing the native ant community structure. This is possible as a result of one native ant species that increased in abundance in invaded sites, and which was responsible for the greatest dispersal of acacia seeds out of any other ant species. In undisturbed communities, this species is usually excluded from plant ant mutualisms by other native primary seed dispersers. But following exclusion of these species in invasive sites, it produces a different composition of plant species. The results also suggest that native seeds are better adapted for dispersal by native ants, whilst the invasive acacia seeds have a high invasive potential, likely due to their generalist nature and seed traits that are particularly attractive to native ant species. The results revealed that the likelihood that a seed is dispersed is influenced by different seed traits in invaded versus non-invaded ant communities. The small size and high oleic acid content of acacia seeds are 2 traits potentially resulting in its increased dispersal in invaded ant communities. The results from this paper suggest that the invasive Argentine ant has cascading effects on mutualistic interactions, which increases the vulnerability of a given community to secondary invasion. This change does not arise directly as a result of the invader's dispersal ability, but instead indirectly via its effect on the native community structure of ants. Understanding the mutualistic interactions within a community and how these are affected by invasive species is crucial for the effective implementation of conservation strategies and the management of particularly high-risk invasive species in order to prevent biodiversity loss. As with all scientific studies, there are some limitations with the methodology. Long-term outcomes of seed dispersal were not monitored. Future studies could record whether germination and establishment of each dispersed seed was successful to give a better understanding of the impact of the invasive ant species on ecosystem composition and function. Lastly, when you're thinking about the broader implications of this research, it's important to remember that an invasive species can alter multiple interconnected processes that weren't necessarily included in this study. It would therefore not be sensible to make a broad statement about the effect of an invasive species on a native ecosystem without recognising this lack of information.